So you want better mouth tracking? I can probably help with that. Hi, what's up? I'm Kozii Chu, and if you don't know me already, I actually made one of these guides before, but on my main channel, and now I'm just remaking it with a little bit more depth. I wanted to make sure that there was a guide out there specifically for mouth tracking and like changing settings and stuff like that for both iPhone and webcam. Keep in mind that this is something specifically for VTube Studio, and it's not for any other tracking programs, and it's not for 3D, and it's only for 2D avatars, alright? Okay, so we're going to start with iPhone tracking, but we're going to start with something really specific with iPhone tracking that I don't think a lot of people talk about, and that is the actual settings on your iPhone for your tracking. So you'll have to go to the app, you'll have to go to this little camera button here, and you'll have to scroll down to specifically these settings. The blink sensitivity, eye open sensitivity, mouth open sensitivity, all of this is controlled specifically by your iPhone settings. It's not controlled in-app, and if you change any of these settings on Steam, then it's not actually going to do anything. So you'll have to change if you want your blink sensitivity to be higher, if you want your eye open sensitivity to be higher. All of this stuff on here is controlled by your iPhone. So make sure that you make these changes here first. Same thing with if you don't want your eye blinking linked, or if you do want your eye blinking linked or something like that, you have to control that through here, not through the Steam app. There's also a blink fix thing if you need to mess with that. I'm going to talk about mostly mouth tracking. Just make sure that you mess around with your settings in the iPhone app as well as your actual VTube Studio app. Sorry if my tracking is a little wonky. It's because I'm waving my hand in front of my iPhone. A lot of those settings are really self-explanatory, so I'm not really going to go over them. I have created a different export of my model that is specifically for iPhone tracking that doesn't have any settings on it. So I'm going to start from a completely fresh state as if I just have uploaded this model for the first time. Usually I start with the auto setup because that's a good starting place. The auto setup sets things up kind of weirdly sometimes. If we zoom in here, you can see there's something weird going on with my cheek puff. I find this happens every single time. This might not be the case for you from a model that you got from a different rigger. Just if it does happen, if this is something that's going on for you, make sure you go into your settings, into the little person icon at the top, scroll down, and try to find where your cheek puff setting is. Mine is down near the bottom. Here we go. So it says param cheek, and right now it's linked to mouth smile. What you need the input to be is instead cheek puff. This is an iPhone only thing. So if you don't have an iPhone, then don't worry about it. But we'll get to that in the actual webcam part. Okay, so you can turn that on. For me, I also need to do something like this to make sure that it doesn't do a cheek puff like at the start, and then that's what happens when I like puff my cheeks out and stuff. I'm actually gonna make this like 0.5 or something, I don't know. Okay, so the first problem that I like to solve after my cheek puff is I like to make sure that my mouth can close. Usually I have a lot of issues with that because I have really big lips, so I'll go to the mouth open parameter, and I'll go down to the bottom here, and I will make the bottom just something like 0.03, something really small, so that my mouth closes, and make sure that it completely closes no matter what. So that's my first issue. Second, if you watch this red dot on both the mouth smile and mouth open parameters, you can get an idea of how much you're getting out of your mouth tracking. As you can see on the mouth form, it only really stays in the middle and then goes up. And then on the mouth open, it only really stays on the bottom and hits the middle. So I'm not getting the most out of my mouth tracking right now. So the best way to deal with this is usually to go to this in part here. And if you want to make it so that it goes lower, if you want, you know, the bottom point to actually hit this bottom here, you want to make the bottom number a little bit bigger. So I'm gonna make mine 0.3. So that starts me at a more default expression. It starts me not quite frowning, but I can still like hit a frown point with my expressions. But I'm not constantly smiling and only able to smile. Next thing I'll usually do to get the most out of my parameters is to change the top number, and I usually lower this a tiny bit. My default is to go 0.3 on the bottom and 0.8 on the top, and you could see that offers a pretty large range of motion depending on whatever expressions I'm using. And you could see the red dot like really bumping around all over the place. That's what I like. Then we can go back to the mouth open parameter. You can see that usually it's only really close to the bottom and it only really hits up to about the middle portion. Sometimes that's fine. Sometimes you don't want your mouth to open that wide. That's okay. If you do want your mouth to open wider, then you're going to want to lower this top number again. I'm going to go for something, just to show you, I'm going to go for something like 0.7. So you can see that it hits the top range of my possible mouth open a lot quicker and a lot easier. I usually, I think, for this model, go for about 0.9, so it's a little bit higher, but it's not like super overboard. And that is the easy way to set up your mouth tracking parameters. As you can see, I already have a much better mouth tracking setup. There is one other thing that you can mess with to try and make this better. You can turn on the advanced lip sync, which is using my voice to try and tell apart each one of these shapes. Personally, I found that if I just calibrate each of these like letters as I'm making a sound with the right shaping for my mouth, it usually makes it a little bit more accurate. So, for instance, this is a, I, U, E, O are the different sounds that it's working with. So I'll hit calibrate. And I'll try and make the right mouth shape as I'm trying to do these different sounds. E. No, that's not quite what I want. E. I'm not quite hitting it, but you know what I'm kind of going for there with the teeth closed and stuff. Then ooh, eh, o, a, I, U, E, O. Kaki, kukeko, mami, mumi. And then you could do silence calibration too. You could just be like. So yeah, that ends up calibrating a little bit better to my voice, I found. So it listens to whatever sounds I'm making and it tries to set them to the right mouth parameters. There is a way for a Live 2D rigger to set it up to have each one of these different parameters its own thing. And then you usually do this setup and model sort of thing here. I've never really done that, so I can't really explain to you how to do that. There may be another video out there that does. I personally have never really needed it because I usually get pretty good mouth tracking without that, so I'm not really going to worry about it this time around. Maybe next time. But this is basically set up for iPhone. That's pretty much how I would deal with my mouth tracking on iPhone. If we pull back up my other model, I have, this one is already set up with all of my tracking how I usually do it. You can kind of see that, the mouth tracking is about the same. It's a little bit different on this one, but that's just because I've tweaked it a little bit more than that. The settings are slightly different than they are in the default setup. I mess with my settings a lot. But it's a lot better than it was, and you could play with the numbers and you could try and make things, closer to however you want them to be. Just in case you were curious what my default settings are for this model right now, and how I've tweaked things, you can kind of see it's not quite what I was saying for the default one that I was making, but it's pretty close. I also technically changed the maximum on my mouth open. Technically, it'll say at the top 1.2 max. That is the total max points of the rigging. You'll usually want that number to match with what the actual max is, because that'll usually help you get the most out of your tracking. I think on the default one that I put in, it said something like 2.1. So make sure that that is about what the actual max is there, or if not quite, at least pretty close in number. Okay, and the last face tracking thing that you'll have to deal with an iPhone specifically, this is something that only iPhones can do, along with like the cheek puff thing, is mouth X. You may or may not have this rigging. Just make sure that, you know, if you want this sort of rigging, if you want the cheek puff, if you want the mouth X, you're telling the person who is doing your rigging that you want these features so that they can make sure that they're in there. But mouth X is basically the side-to-side motion of your mouth. So you may need to set up this parameter in general. It might not even be here. This is on my default model, so I've already set it up. And this is on the iPhone default model, where it actually already automatically set it up so that I can move side to side and stuff. But I like to make it a little bit easier for me to actually hit the mouth X, because I think it's a little bit nicer if I don't have to like move my face as much. I make pretty small facial motions usually, so it's a little bit easier if I set it up to account for that. So what I'll usually do is I'll make the top like 0.3 and the bottom like negative 0.3. That keeps it still in the middle, but makes it a lot easier to hit the mouth X parameter without like straining your face. Okay, so now we've set up for iPhone, so I'm going to set up for webcam. So I'm going to do the auto setup again. Oh my god, I look so mad. So my webcam is set up above my normal like PC setup. My iPhone is usually set below. So I've got like a monitor that, you know, it sits up a little bit. Oh my god, I look so crazy right now. I usually find that webcam tracking is better from above, and for some reason iPhone tracking is better from below. I don't know why that is. That's just what I've found. Let me fix this freaking cheek puff. I'm just gonna get rid of it because, like I said, that does not work on webcam. Oh my god, look at how crazy. Look at how insane. Look how actually insane I look. Okay. So, hold on. Set this to 1.2 max. Okay, that already helped quite a bit, but for webcam tracking, my mouth actually opens a little bit too far. Now, keep in mind, when we started iPhone tracking, we changed these things here, the tracking settings. All of these have to be set up in VTube Studio when you're doing webcam tracking. So, for instance, I think my mouth open sensitivity might be too high. So I'm going to lower this. And as you can see, that actually already helped quite a bit. Same with the eye open sensitivity. That does help. It helps. The blink sensitivity will lower a little bit too. I do look a little bit insane on this one. And then the mouth smile sensitivity, we can probably lower too. So I'm going to start with this, and then we will go back here and take a look at my mouth open settings and stuff like that. This one, instead of having a problem with my mouth not staying closed, I'm having a problem with my mouth closing too much. So what I'm actually going to want to do is, I think, lower this number. So that is an idea of how you can fix that. I'm going to actually make it negative 0.1. Still not quite right. Negative 0.03. Not quite. Negative 0.01. Not quite. Negative 0.0. You really got to play with things. And then I'm going to make the top part, let's go 0.8 or something like that. Seems a little bit better. Same thing with the mouth smile. Currently, I'm stuck in mouth smile hell. I'm so far up. So I'm actually going to make this like 0.5 or something like that instead. Oh my god, iPhone. iPhone is what I'm used to at this point. Webcam tracking is insane, man. There's so many problems with this. I'm gonna have to do a full webcam tracking setup. I'm just gonna focus on the mouth for now, though. I'm also gonna reset this to default values, just to... Actually, let me go to simple lip sync just for a moment. So, okay. So, my god. I'm sorry. I'm laughing at myself. I look so insane right now. I look crazy. Oh my god. Webcam is wild. Okay, so just a little bit of an update. I changed a couple of things. This is my normal model with webcam tracking. As you can see, the webcam is tracking my face and stuff like that already. These are the settings that I ended up at, and actually I swapped from automatic to manual, which seemed to help a lot with the parameter setup that I'm doing on here. And then I am also still using the simple lip sync right now. So let me go ahead and go into my face settings on here and show you what I've got. For the mouth smile, this is the same as I use on my default. Mouth open, this is the same as I use my default. Mouth X. I haven't changed anything in here from like my normal default stuff. Technically I've still got my like mouth X and stuff, but if I try and wiggle my mouth, it doesn't do anything because I'm completely in webcam mode. Now, if I swap from webcam to normal tracking, you can get an idea of the difference between the two. So currently camera is on. Camera's off. Now I'm back to my iPhone tracking again. So that is a difference. It's quite a big difference, but that's a difference between webcam and iPhone tracking. iPhone tracking is just always going to be better, like I mentioned. But you can at least set it up to be better and look a lot more smooth overall. So definitely mess with your settings. If you want to try and copy the settings that I've got here and see if that works for you, that's fine. But make sure that everyone's face is different, right? So you gotta make sure you do edits for yourself. I had to do certain things because things like I have a little bit of a lazy eye sometimes. I've got problems with my lips being too big, etc. Just make the changes that you need and keep tweaking until you think it looks good. So this isn't set up for an entire model. There are other things that I like to make changes on model setup, so I will do probably a second video for that later on, especially things like tweaking your eye settings so that you smile more, tweaking things like adding in a tail wag sort of thing, stuff like that. A lot of this stuff will be done by your model creator before you get the model. So you only really need to make changes if this is like your first time ever setting up a model and you rigged it yourself or something, or if you are noticing that you're having a lot of issues with your face tracking just not being what you want it to be. So just make sure that you are trying to keep in contact with your rigger. If you're having any issues with tracking, talk to them about it as well as trying to make changes. See if there's anything that they can help you with. Ask questions. Don't ask me questions. I don't know how your model's rigged. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope it helps. See you later. Bye-bye.